Well, hello, everybody. It doesn't look like we're going to be doing a countdown today. Sometimes the buttons just don't work on StreamYard. So thanks, non-existent producer. You were right on top of that one. What better way to start a Monday? How is everybody doing here? December 12th, regardless of what my thumbnail might have told you. How are you doing? Where are you hanging out from? Welcome to Hangouts and Headlines, all the good stuff. Sometimes you just got to roll with it, folks. That's what we find doing these live streams, live broadcasts, making 14 videos a week, whatever else we're doing here. I am so excited to be here. Feels like I never left. And we've got a story here today about Fortnite, of all things, and whether or not you can be addicted to it, whether or not you can file a class action lawsuit about it, what that means. And we have very little information to go on, so we're going to be looking only at the reporting today, but that's really for headlines. And I don't think it's going to be as long of a discussion as we might have had in the recent past with 14 headlines or things like that. But I do think it's going to be a fun way to start the week, start a Monday, get ready for a very productive week, having fun with everybody, and maybe hitting the buttons right, setting the thumbnails right, and doing all the great stuff. I also wanted to point out, if you didn't see late last night, I did put up an edited post from one of the sections of Virtual Legality on Nintendo and Xbox signing a Nintendo contract. We're going to try to do more Law and Laughter stuff. We did hire a new editor who is fantastic, the Chinchilla of Evidence, which might be a reference that you recommend or that you recognize, depending. It's just going to be that kind of morning, folks. And they are doing an absolutely fantastic job, and we should have more stuff up pretty soon and hopefully make that a regular part of the videos that we do so that folks can at least get a handle on what this channel is about, what our shows are about, without having to just dive in to watch it an hour and a half or 2 hours of a video. So look out for those. Check that one out from late last night. I think it turned out really, really well, and I'm hopeful that we get to do more of that. My eyes look sore. You know, it's that kind of week in Hoeg House. We've got some sickness in here. It's the winter. We've got the heater on, all those kinds of things. You'll just slowly see me descend into Michigan winter-like form because I think I started streaming in May of this year. So that's the spring already, even here in Michigan. December, January, February, we're going to get through them. We're going to get through them together, folks. But they aren't my favorite months here. So, no, I'm feeling okay. I had a lot of sleep debt that I tried to pay off on Saturday. On Sunday, it proved to be a work day because we did have sickness in the house. My wife, co-counsel, comes in and says, if there's any videos you want to make sure you get done, because we are obviously going through a lot of the Federal Trade Commission stuff and the Microsoft stuff, you should tape them tomorrow. So I did do a video that we've got ready to go today, yesterday, but that was all I was capable of doing with a 2.5-hour bitcast, prepping that video, doing some other things. So yeah, I'm effectively on my Tuesday on Monday, but that's just how it is. One of the things they don't tell you about doing streaming and combining it with another job is that, well, I like what I do. I love having these conversations. I love being in this space, but you are basically always working. And so we're still trying to figure out exactly how to roll with that, especially after I have a week like I did last week where I was live streaming 3.5 hours at a time, taping videos, a number of which aren't even live yet for other channels that you will see this week probably that are also very long. But I like this. I like this stuff. I'm never going to complain about doing this kind of thing. But yeah, could I use some eye drops? Could I use some more sleep and some more rest? I could, but that's all right. That's all right. We're going to have fun today. We're going to have fun talking about these things. We're going to have fun hanging out. So let me know where you're at. Let me know how you're doing this morning, how your Monday's already going, if you're a little bit ahead of me. And we'll just enjoy each other's company this Monday morning. Already 250 people in the chat at 7:34 a.m., which is just fantastic. I love it. And assuming I don't just miss the button, Jennifer says, good morning, Ho. Good morning, Jennifer. We're going to have a fantastic Monday morning. We're going to have a good hangouts, good headlines, good day. And then, yeah, I'm taping some other shows for some other channels later on. It's just that kind of news item. If y'all aren't familiar with it, if you came here to this channel more from the Depp v. Heard stuff, this lawsuit against Microsoft is one of the biggest news items in realistically the history of gaming. And so a lot of people have a lot of thoughts. A lot of people want to talk to me, which is great. But it does mean we're kind of balancing even more plates than usual. Doing it successfully, I think, but a lot of plates up there. Independent Aquaman. Is that suggestive of the fact that Aquaman in its non-independent form has been somehow taken over by Justice League responsibilities or is co-opted by government or corporate interests? I have curious thoughts. Wait, Fortnite became like EverQuest where there is no end to the game? Fortnite in its main iteration is just a series of games. Unlike EverQuest, where it's a multiplayer, persistent online universe, Fortnite is just playing the game over and over again. But we'll talk about it. Yeah, is it addictive? It's very popular. Does popularity make you addictive? Where's the line for game companies or any other company from just making something that people really enjoy and want to spend their time in? And when does that cross the line into compulsion? And can the law answer that question are all interesting things I'm going to ask you all about. What's the role of parents? All these kinds of things kind of circle around this. And I can admit my biases here, right? I run a video game focused channel. I talk about gaming all the time, and I believe that it does a great deal of good, but that doesn't mean that I believe that parents just walk away. So we'll talk about it. We'll talk about it definitely, but it's an interesting case study already because it is from Quebec. They don't really have studies of a scientific nature on the record here, and the judge wants it to go through because I think there might be a case there. Alexis84DE says, I hear you, Hoeg. Monday came too early. I was sitting there at I don't even know how late last night, being like, wow, Sunday really turned into a work day. I could use another Sunday. But it's all right. We're gonna have some fun. We got a lot to do. We got a lot of videos to make. We got a lot of law to do. I got to follow up with some clients that dropped off the face of the map that I think need a document, but I don't know because they didn't follow up on it. Yeah. Callista says, thank God someone else remembers the EverQuest drama. Yeah, they had a name for it. We'll wait more time into the video to give it that name. I was starting to feel very old. This has been around forever, honestly. Even before EverQuest, there were conversations about this in the 80s, probably the 70s. I don't know. And it'll be interesting to go through and your thoughts. The reason I do a headlines like this is that I know how I feel about this, and I'll share it with you, but I'm not the be all and end all of kind of looking at these types of questions. I think if we're going to have a live show, a format like this one, it's a great chance to really dig into what different people think about this, whether you're talking to each other in chat, whether you're talking to me, asking questions. This is the greatness of this kind of format. So let's talk about it, definitely. Doom Reaper has a thought. Parents letting their kids run the house now, LOL. I can't say that that's not a feeling I have when you look at some of this stuff because it's very difficult for kids to accomplish these things or lack of accomplishment of these things on their own. We will talk about it. Independent Aquaman says, Lol Callista returning on the EverQuest concept. I know about the EverQuest drama because I had 2 roommates who became homeless and jobless because they couldn't discipline their game times. They were brothers. That's a really good and interesting perspective in Independent Aquaman. I'm going to be interested in hearing what you have to say about this vis-a-vis Fortnite, and we'll explain what Fortnite is for those of you that don't know at the top of our headline sections. Many just realized that this is the last week before everyone at the office goes on vacation. Party! Really? That's good news. That's good news. So it's the 12th today. I guess Christmas is a week from Sunday. Is that accurate? Hey, celebrate it. If you've got an office that's going to take a week off or more, enjoy it. I love to hear that. My brother in game development has a week at the end of the year, which I wish I had sometimes. A lot of transactions get closed at the end of the year because you have to hit that calendar year for your transaction. But it's gonna be a fun time for a lot of people. I'm looking forward to seeing some family, enjoying some time off. We'll see. Mike asks, knock on wood, Hoeg, but I'm tempted to say that the Lions actually look like a playoff team. Vikings were 10-2, and they handled them pretty well. So at the risk of offending any of my Minnesota friends here in chat or watching the show, I have said for a number of weeks that the Vikings in particular seemed like a very illusory, successful team. That every game I watched them in, they seemed to almost lose. They seemed to be outgained by 100 yards, and it didn't seem sustainable. Now, does that mean that you can't just win a Super Bowl on luck for 3 or 4 games in a row? No, but it does make it a little less likely than a sustainable foundational path. And I think the Lions exposed them a little bit yesterday and really should have beaten them twice. They had them dead to rights in Minnesota. But, hey, stranger things have happened than a lucky team getting hot and winning the Super Bowl. It's just never been the Lions. But, yeah, the Lions, the hot Lions, are only 1 game below 500. Which just goes to show you the hole that they dug themselves into at the top of the season. But yeah, my Detroit Lions are kicking butt. They could be on like a 7-game winning streak, but they dropped one from some stupidity in coaching on Thanksgiving. It's all right. It's all right. Zekocracy says they, presumably Epic Games, make a product but don't force anyone to use that product. Today, people buy fake tokens of worth like crypto and NFTs, participating more on social media than in real life situations. Still personal choice. Right. The other angle that's going to come up in this, of course, is the children angle. And the law isn't so specifically aimed at protecting children. I've talked about it in terms of rhetoric here on this channel, but just think of the children as a particularly kind of pernicious rhetorical device because we do want to both protect children, of course, but also allow adults to do what they will with their time and make those choices. So it becomes a bit of a back and forth on that. We will see what they've done here with this lawsuit. Skew has become a YouTube member. Thank you, Skew. I really appreciate that. Hope you have fun here with the emojis and good stuff like that. Jason says, should Fortnite be responsible for parents who can't parent? No, which is kind of the harsh view of the this isn't their fault perspective. So we'll take a look at that. Independent Aquaman says, I had a friend who was in WoW tournaments. That's the World of Warcraft back then, 15 years ago. Not the same as EverQuest because it had game ends. Long time plays, but still it had ends as at the tournament level, right? WoW doesn't have an end itself. Actually don't know how you do a WoW tournament. I'm curious now. I know one thing. Never, ever sue a company. Even a class action lawsuit will probably be dismissed. Otherwise, as a private person who never works at a company, please don't. You will end up losing. Well, Hangouts and Headlines is not legal advice. I can't say that you should never sue a company because I don't want the companies to just necessarily run wild over all of us. But I can say that Jacob brings up a good point, which is it is difficult to win, that the incentives are aligned for plaintiffs' class action lawyers to go try to go get that money, and that they don't much care whether or not the claim that you're going to bring is a great one if they think they can get it over the finish line, collecting some amount for the class, which may or may not be sufficient enough for that class to actually get anything. Right. So I do think you have to have a good counsel that you trust talking to you about these things. And at the end of the day, it's always going to be an uphill climb to sue anyone, really. The burden is going to be on you. Lovely says, hello, H&H crew. Hello, Lovely, and thank you so much for the super chat. Love starting my week out with Hoeg and you fine folks. It's really the fine folks more than the Hoeg, I think. Yeah. Last Friday said they were giving Immortality app in Netflix a try. If you are here, how did it go? Asks Reasonable Glitter Mess. I believe someone did text me. I guess it's not a text. Tweet at me. Over the weekend, and I don't think I got a chance to respond. The one thing I've been apologizing for days now is that my messages are out of control. I'm not going to respond to everybody. I really do like to respond to most people, especially the ones that like solicit an answer or make a request of me. But I'm not able to get to them all right now. I did get a message from somebody that essentially said, played a bunch of Immortality, reasonable minds can differ. So I don't know. There's a couple of people, at least in my circle and outside of it, that have tried my game of the year and said, not for me, thanks. It's rough, but I also know that my brother played it and he loved it. So, it's good. Not insane. What else are we going on here? My Java Bean says, no, I didn't Okay. Hopefully I didn't just put you in timeout. On call this week, then short week next week. Gonna be a bear, but once it's done, sleepy time. Sleepy time emoji times 2. Everybody focused on the end of the year. Glitter Girl, this is my last week in work before Christmas. I have holidays left over, so I'm taking 2 full weeks off. We can be jealous, yes, but we can also be loving and say, that is awesome. I hope that that feels great. Glitter Girl, I am envious. There's no doubt. Other people talking about their vacations here in chat. Proxy Loxy says, luckily the Vikings fans never really expected to go to the Super Bowl. In fairness, I don't know who's going to win the NFC. I don't think the Eagles are unbeatable or anything. So we'll see that. Reasonable Glitterman says, I have not played a video game since the 90s, but since Hoeg recommended it and it being available as an app, I would be interested. On Immortality, the one thing that really goes for it, if you're not a video gamer on a regular basis, is that it's not a very video gamey video game. It's an interactive clip viewer thing. It's more of a mystery than anything else. And so I think a lot of people would enjoy it. A lot of people. Matt L. with the very large super chat. Thank you so much for your generosity, Matt. I really appreciate it. Been going through rough times over the last few months, and Virtual Legality, Hangouts and Headlines, and Lawyers and Dragons have really helped by providing some distraction where reasonable minds can differ. Thanks to Hoeg, Mrs. Hoeg, and the community for being awesome. Matt, thank you, man. I really am. I'm glad that a place like this and conversations like this and episodes like this can hopefully bring a little bit of light to rough times. I always like to get these messages because I really think it's a cool thing that we can have this tiny little corner of the internet where we have positivity. And I think people generally feel pretty good about dropping in, having these conversations, doing these talks, even when we're talking about super serious and important stuff. So, Matt, thank you. I really appreciate it. And I'm glad that we could be here. I hope you stick around a long time because we're going to continue to have fun in here for the foreseeable future on this channel. Bradley Rogers asks, what differentiates Fortnite from any other addiction? Isn't this the same as suing Budweiser if a family member becomes an alcoholic? Yes. Yeah, we're going to see the analogs that this company uses to bring this class action. They're going to talk about the tobacco settlements. The one thing I always have an issue with vis-a-vis addictions on a non-food chemical basis is that it doesn't have the same kind of brain impacts. You don't have a withdrawal symptom for not playing Fortnite. You can be ornery. You can be mad that your mom's not letting you play Fortnite or what have you, or your wife, depending on your age. But it's not going to have that same kind of chemical imbalance as tobacco or alcohol or things along those lines. So I'm not suggesting that you can't get into a bad spot with gambling or that you can't get into a bad spot with video games or these kinds of things. But it does become a question of who can you sue? Why can you sue it? What does addiction mean under the law? That kind of thing. And it's a tricky question. We're not going to have answers here, folks. We're not going to get to the end of the episode and be like, we solved it. Next, we'll handle the next major question in society, but we are going to have a fun conversation, I think. MZ says this virtual legality headline topic really caught my attention. Interesting to delve deeper in this discussion. I think so. I think this is going to become more and more pertinent as we move forward and these games get more popular and certainly use this free-to-play business model that Fortnite uses. We'll talk about the Fortnite product when we start that headline section. But yeah, I think it's very, very interesting. Alexis says, my parents had a password on the computer, and each time I wanted to use it, I had to ask their permission. I did too, except my dad used the password, which I figured out very early on. Dad, if you're watching, you know this to be true. You can verify. If you're not, shouldn't use password. But it is that kind of thing where parents do have to follow this stuff. And I'm the father of 2 young girls, and they have iPads, and we do try to monitor what they do with it. And certainly one of them loves video games, perhaps a little bit more than the other. And that's, parenting. But we'll talk about that. Erica says, I saw this headline, read it to my teen son, and I was like, think I should add my name to the list of parents in the lawsuit because it smells of you. Now, given the headline about showering, I'm a little bit curious about whether that was intended or not, Erica. Upside down happy face emoji. But it is funny to see reactions from actual kids. I've never grown up. I'm a kid at heart. I think folks know this about me. I play Fortnite. My girls are looking forward to the Fortnite. I don't know what they call it. I think it's Winterfest, the Christmas event where you open presents and you go and have fun in Fortnite for a couple weeks. We enjoy that. It's really the only time we really play Fortnite a lot is at Christmas time. So it's currently downloaded and ready to go. But yeah, we control how much game playing happens, certainly. Jacob says one of the first Fortnite lawsuits was because a kid called the Backpack Kid was claimed to create a dancing game called The Floss. If you actually go back in time into Virtual Legality, we have covered Fortnite dances, and we have covered those intellectual property kind of fights. Of course, we have Epic versus Apple, which is all about Fortnite. But yes, there's a lot of fun stuff that comes out of Fortnite from the legal perspective. They have excellent lawyers, both in licensing, intellectual property, and defending themselves from suits like this. So we'll talk about that aspect as well. But yeah, Fortnite, whenever you have a bag of money that is as big as Epic's and as big as Fortnite's, you're going to have legal issues because people want to go get that money. The Mad Hatter, have we talked about how Twitter is apparently charging Apple users $11 instead of the already absurd $8 for Twitter Blue yet? We have not. I think that news only came out over the weekend, maybe a little earlier. But it might be something we cover in this space. I actually have to go look at the Apple terms of service to see if you're allowed to just, under Apple's terms, have a product that is in the App Store at a higher price than what is available outside of it. Probably the answer is yes, but you're not allowed to advertise it within the app. But I would want to check on that. It certainly matches kind of the 30% take. If you take 30% of $11, you're going to get knocked down $3.30. And so you're actually making less money from a user that subscribes through Twitter Blue at 30%. But I think after 12 months, it goes down to 15%. It's a whole thing. So if I do a video on that, I would look at all of those numbers and figure out what was going on. But it is interesting to see because it's a variant on what Epic tried to do by having a pass-through version of paying them that doesn't involve using the App Store. So Elon Musk is attacking the App Store and Google Play as a collateral. So is Epic. So is Microsoft. That's part of the story that they're going to tell these regulators as they fight this FTC lawsuit, potentially more lawsuits in the future. So it's a lot of fun. Mrs. Hoeg Law says she has safely arrived at the school parking lot. Thanks for being here, everyone. It's good I get updates on the status of my wife through the chat. Mike says bowling league tonight and tomorrow night. What's your best bowling score? Mine? I don't know. It's going to be some embarrassing, something like the high 180s, maybe. I think that's probably right. I think I've hit the 180s. I am not an excellent bowler. You don't want me on your bowling team, but it is fun. It's fun. We regularly bowl on New Year's Eve. It's kind of our thing. Skew SME, Musk's pronoun is prosecute Fauci. Tweet is WTF. Yeah, Elon Musk is a troll, right? I mean, we know this. However you feel about his political proclivities on any given question, he's a troll. And so, he's doing the Twitter files thing, which I haven't covered yet in this space. And I probably would have if we didn't just get taken over by Microsoft and the FTC, which is one thing I would add to this, right? So this is a Fortnite type article. And in the back of my head, at least, it's never been a hard and fast rule. I've separated Virtual Legality into the gaming news and Hangouts and Headlines into the everything else kind of news that I'm interested in talking about. That might start to blend a little bit. I was asked about this when I put this particular post up on Twitter. And I said, this might start to blend a little bit because I don't know that we're not going to be covering Microsoft and the FTC for many, many, many videos. And so as that does blend, we'll take some of the articles and put them in Hangouts and Headlines. To the extent that I think that there's something of more generic usefulness to the conversation than just video games. But there will be some spillover there, I think, in the future. Hopefully that's all right with everybody. But we'll try to cover everything else that you might be interested in. As always, flag me, send me headlines. I will try to do more polls. My friend Emily Baker has recommended I do more polls in the community to ask what folks want to read about and talk about. And I have to get better at that. So I'll be doing that hopefully in the future as well. But for right now, looking at all of this, I think that there is going to be a little bit more video game content in the Hangouts and Headlines. We'll see. We'll see. Don't want to drive anybody away with too much video game stuff early in the morning. You can only take it so far, right? Jacob, did you hear that Microsoft bought 4% of London stock? Did they buy it, or was it given to them as part of their strategic alliance to provide Azure services? I don't know. I have to look at those stories. Yes, I got flagged on things. I get kind of an update from everybody's DMs and everybody's messages about what is going on overnight. And one of those things was that Microsoft is now partial owner of the London Stock Exchange, which, is at least interesting based on everything we see going on right now. Spank Rocket Gaming just coming down hard on the parents. I blame the parents. It's simple. Just take the console away. Don't give them your debit cards or credit cards or any kind of cards at all, really. No plastic for the kids. TET became a YouTube member. Became a YouTube member. We can conjugate those verbs correctly. Thank you, T. I hope you have a wonderful time here. I really appreciate the support. Icarus for Scissors XD. Icarus for Scissors. All right. Good morning from Insomniacs on the West Coast. You really are an Insomniac if you're up on the West Coast here, but I appreciate you. Maybe you're practicing for a marathon or something where it requires activity very early in the morning. Jelly says it's psychological, not physiological. Yeah, I mean, that's the distinction. I think the law has to be more cognizant of physiological things that are absolutely outside a person's control and the psychological stuff. Now, maybe that's me introducing my own biases, and you can talk me down from that as part of this conversation. But that's generally how I see it. The law has to deal with quantifiable things, and psychological is a very difficult thing for the law to deal with. And it's certainly a very difficult thing to hold a third party responsible for. And that's where that really comes down, is who should have liability for this. Parents are the closest. Company provides a product. Is this the kind of thing that they should be liable for if it has negative or deleterious effects? Lord Zenu Save says it's not that tricky. TTS dopamine, and they have a psychologist that specializes in it that advises video games. I can send you a dev talk about it. Right, but dopamine, well, we'll see. We will talk about it. And the question is always, you put out a product into the marketplace, and okay, it provides dopamine for a user, for a player, for a eater, for a wearer, whatever it might be. Are you responsible for somebody that just seeks that hit in an addictive way? I'd argue that you're not. And that's, again, my beliefs on this and what the law is capable of doing. But I can see a situation where folks look at this and say, well, Rick, there's a societal problem. These things aren't going very well, and the law should do something. My caution on that is always that it's easy to say the law should do something or government should do something or those kinds of things. It's a lot harder to get that to be what that something should be without otherwise harming other people. Because take Fortnite as a for instance, the vast majority of folks should be allowed to play Fortnite, probably even the vast majority of kids. And so how much do we control for the situation where there are outliers and people on the margins that get affected by this? We always have to be careful about that. You know, this is for the children, or this is for the children on this outer edge of addiction, when the easiest answer is to say, take those special cases and say, all right, you have to be cautious. You have to be careful. We don't ban alcohol because they're alcoholics. We say, all right, alcoholics, you got to go find your way. You got to be careful and potentially offer, social services and things like that. But as somebody brought up earlier in the video, we don't sue Budweiser for it. And most people, I think most people, I'm not a scientist on these topics, can go and handle these things. They can handle Fortnite. They can handle food. They can handle alcohol, whatever it might be. And it's unfortunate that there are folks that can't. And it really is. And I hope we get the right safety nets in place and that kind of thing. But the law is a blunt instrument to go and say, okay, if you're going to be liable for this, you have to change your whole game. We're going to affect millions of people because there's this outside case. And I've looked at the law a long time, and I'm a corporate lawyer. I represent companies. So that's kind of where I come out on these things, but I'm happy to have the conversation. I love this kind of stuff. Absolutely. Mike GT1110 is a new member of the channel. Thank you, Mike. I hope you have a wonderful time here. Loving to see all the memberships this morning. That's fantastic. We got other people talking about this in various degrees. Deidre says Epic hired psychologists to make the game very, very addictive. There's also a case where a Spanish teen was diagnosed with Fortnite addiction in the clinical world first. Yeah, I mean, this is going around in terms of there are various psychological organizations, various medical organizations that are looking at video games and video game addiction. I mean, you're using the word addictive there, Deidre. The question is did they use it to make it addictive, or did they try to figure out the ways that it would be the most gratifying, right? And maybe that's not different to you. But when you're making a product and you're putting it out in the market, it's not unusual to say we want to make it as satisfying to our players as possible, or to our buyers, or whatever else it might be in different product lines. Where does that cross the line is not as easy, I think, to kind of evaluate as it might appear, right? So that's part of this conversation, and it's what I really like having. Jacob says sometimes Epic is working on are being under wraps during several of the years, and Fortnite might get a first-person camera mode soon, as far as I know. Yeah, it's possible. Possible they might add an FPS element. That's certainly what they're competing against most significantly in places like Warzone, which is the Call of Duty product, just to bring us all the way back around the horn. And the original Battle Royale, which name is escaping me for some reason, PUBG, which is just not in there. Player Unknown's Battlegrounds, maybe, I think. Something like that. PUBG. Is Fortnite any more addictive than Tetris? I lost many nights sleeping playing Tetris. Tetris is great, isn't it? Well, that's the thing, right? People can argue that Fortnite is. The Battle Pass is designed to give you certain amounts of that dopamine. And there are other aspects that are maybe a little bit randomized, and it's always a different game when you go and play it. It's a little bit different than Falling Blocks, but it's the same kind of milieu. It's just a matter of whether or not we've gotten that much better at encouraging people to stay within that ecosystem, and if we have, whether or not video games have crossed the line into somehow manipulating its users with the various systems that it uses. This comes back to kind of the loot box discussion, and Fortnite doesn't use loot boxes. But at this point in time, that might not be enough to separate it from either governments or plaintiffs' attorneys or legislatures that want to do something about the kids that aren't eating, apparently. Dancing Beagle asks, when does the liability stop? The makers of the game, device, etc. I mean, there are people addicted to Twitter, Facebook, YouTube. Anything can be a negative addiction, right? Anything can be an addiction, depending on the person, depending on the product. And so it's important to try to figure out when we're going to hold those folks liable, because if you do hold them liable, that's going to change their behavior. And maybe that's a good thing. Maybe that's what we want to have happen with a thing like Fortnite or with social media, as you point out. But we have to be cautious with that, because there are plenty of people that can use these things and not destroy their lives. And, maybe the answer is hotlines and social safety nets and things like that. David says, if you don't get addicted to Fortnite, you will get addicted to something else with 100% certainty. I think you mean if you are an addictive personality that is like in this article, then you would have found something else rather than you were just guaranteed to become addicted to something, I believe. I mean, I think the closest thing is probably my teas. But more than addiction there, that's really just waking me up and getting me excited for hangouts and headlines and hanging out with everybody. So I do think that there is a truth factor there, and it can be across video games, right? We're not going to sue the entire video game industry for making games that people enjoy playing, and that's a conversation as well. Merciless Base, I believe people say that the law should do something about it, but when the law does going to go too much, there is no happy medium for everyone. It's a possibility. Those are the things we kind of try to watch out for here. And legislatures, to be candid, aren't always the greatest at doing something and not looking at the secondary order effects, the unintended consequences, if you will, although I tend to say anything that is foreseeable is not necessarily unintended. And so that is part of the fun. This is what we talk about in law school, right? If you haven't been, or if you're thinking about going, these are the kinds of societal questions that you get a lot of in law school, and it's part of the fun. So we're going to do that this morning. Glitter Girl says, has there not been sufficient news and advice on the dangers of too much screen time in video gaming provided to educate parents without individual companies needing to advise about it? I think any company that makes a game like Fortnite is going to want, even just as a shield, to have certain bits of, we control for parent time. We provide these tools through the game. We partner with a watchdog of some kind to do, informative statements. The more you know, with Fortnite characters, that kind of thing. Just because it's useful from an optical perspective more than a legal and liability perspective. But you would hope that people know. You would hope that people understand that you do have to parent. You do have to turn the computer off. You do have to make sure they do their homework. Apparently, you have to make sure they eat. And that's kind of one of the things we'll talk about in the headline is like, well, they would die if they didn't eat. So they're eating. The question is, what does that look like in terms of Fortnite life balance? replacing work-life balance. Reasonable Glitter Mess says, but if they design it to be extra addictive, you keep using that word. I don't know. I get your point about measurable things in law, but maybe they should include a warning like side effects may include whatever. So they can't do that because the FDA would have their butts, FDA. And in that situation, I don't know that they're medically trained enough to know what quote unquote side effects would be. Now, maybe laws start asking for disclaimers. Maybe lawyers start asking for disclaimers to be included. Like you might see with respect to the end of like a FanDuel or sports betting ad sometimes has a gambling can be an addiction. If you find yourself problem gambling, do this, call this hotline or whatever. It's possible. I don't know. But I don't know that they designed it to be extra addictive as much as they designed it to be pleasurable, designed it to be something that you enjoy doing. And we'll talk about this because one of the things that is happening in this class action is this notion about whether or not Fortnite should be held liable, even if they didn't intend for it to be addictive, because the court will find that there is no evidence that they designed it deliberately to be addictive. So that's an interesting aspect of this as well. For a spoiler alert, because we go over to the headlines in just a couple minutes. Fluffy Pink Chaos says, I play Fortnite every day, but not all day. I have self-control, so I think it's bad parenting combined with no self-control. That's right. But kids, teenagers aren't well known for self-control, right? To some level, my kids will go and do something until it is actively harmful to their well-being. And so you do have to get in there and make sure that they're doing the right thing, taking care of themselves, doing their homework, learning to become adults. Hopefully that's the kind of raising a kid kind of angle. And not everybody's going to do that. But are we going to hold the Fortnites of the world liable for that? So that's a really big question. Vincent says, let's hope those kids never play the Kingdom games. They might forget to eat. The old Kingdom games? I used to love those, where you couldn't actively control anybody, but you had to put like economic incentives on what you wanted to get done. Man, now I want to play that. Maybe it's a different Kingdom game. All right, let's take a look at these headlines. So this is the main headline that we talked about. Parents who say their kids won't eat or shower because they're addicted to Fortnite slam Epic Games with a lawsuit. So here's the tricky thing, right? And I think this is apparent to everybody that's reading this. So the parents are suing Epic, and they're doing it because the kids won't eat or shower. Well, the kids are under the parents' control. If they're not eating or they're not showering, you could take their computer away. You could take their laptop away. You can cut off their electricity. You can do all sorts of different things. You are, in fact, the parent here. Now, perhaps you'd prefer to not be at war with Fortnite, and I don't blame you. If you have that kind of addictive relationship with something, you see your kid going through that and you want to lash out at the big company and also maybe make a buck on the way, I understand this lawsuit. Fortnite makes a ton of money. You think it's deleterious to your family environment, and you want to do something about it. Well, the first issue is that you can do something about it. You're the parents. Second issue is this is going a little far with won't eat, because they do eat or they'd be dead. I don't know about the showering. This is kind of a known variable in the video game space. And speaking for someone that won't eat, just forgets to eat, I have a Post-it note that my daughter's made to me that says essentially remember to eat, because I get deeply invested in my work, whether that's making a video or practicing law or anything in between. And I will just forget to eat until I get what we call here hunger headaches at Hoeg House. And I say, oh, I forgot to eat. And so that I know this feeling. I'm definitely not addicted to work, he says, hopefully, about his own particular experience. Am I addicted to work? This is going to be a self-reflective Hoeg Law morning. I don't believe so. I like to make sure I get it done. Papa Rick asks, have you eaten today, Rick? No. Thank you for checking up on me, Papa Rick. Not Papa Hoeg, Papa Rick. But no, I haven't eaten. I don't eat before Hangouts and Headlines, generally speaking. Yeah. I do like to work. Now I have questions about myself. These are parents who don't want to do the work of being a parent. Too many people want to be their kid's friend. Parenting is hard in that regard. You love these little people, and you have to make them upset. You have to make them upset for their own good, and that is something that's wild. as you go through, because I do think every parent at the start has this notion that you're going to be even better than your parents, and you're going to do it even better, and you still have to set guidelines, and you still have to set rules, even for your super smart, awesome kids, and that's basic. I'm not addicted to work. Toja said every addict ever. Okay, all right, we can ease off. After I started this video talking about how much I worked this weekend, I set myself up for this whole thing. Papa Rex says, oh no. And says, agreed, my addicted brain tends to forget that eating is important. I see what you did there. TV is no different than a cell phone or tablet. In fact, a TV is less harmful due to EMF radiation and the fact that you aren't touching a TV. Wait, we're not supposed to watch the TV with our hands on either side like we're in Poltergeist? I'll have to change up my method. Parents often forget to eat because they are so busy sorting out stuff. Did it all the time. It's funny because I usually am eating out of order now. Somewhat pandemic related, because it's just the day is kind of doesn't have the same markers that it used to when I was moving around a little bit more. Omni side, hope you have a good day. I hope you have a good day. Omni Steph, thank you so much for the super chat. Chrissy says, I think both things can be true. These games are designed to keep you going one more game. Sure. And also, as a parent, you are responsible for the well-being of your kid and doing the smart things. Yeah, there's no question that games can be like small a addictive, insofar as I used to refer to the civilization games this way, right? That one more turn. You have a turn, you want to see how it goes, you're implementing some strategies, you've got some new technology, whatever it is in these games. You say, I play one more, and then it's 2 a.m, right? That can happen. That's happened to everybody that plays these kinds of games, I think. But that's kind of a joking level of addiction. By the time that you aren't eating, or you're letting your school work go, or your work go, or as we heard earlier in the video, you become homeless. Obviously, there are ways that you as an individual can interact with products that are designed to make you happy in some way. And you can do it to the deficit of everything else in your life. You can lose relationships, you can lose money, you can lose your house, and that kind of things. We see that with gambling, right? And I think it's important to consider those, because we don't want in society people to do those things, but we also don't want people to be trapped and not allowed to have products if they're not going to be a problem, right? We find this stuff out with like the prohibition and alcohol in particular. And in that case, we want people to be able to make their own choices. And then we have to deal with the edge cases. Then we have to figure out how to best support those edge cases. And I just think that the lawsuits in the legal system are a cudgel that perhaps isn't the best method to do for this. But again, we may have just discovered that I'm apparently addicted to work. So we'll work through this together. Workaholic is a thing, Shireen. Yeah. I don't know whether that's addiction or not. We could talk about it. I just like to work. Leave me alone. They're here as a reference to my poltergeist, putting my hands on the TV. You guys have a lot of thoughts this morning. I love it. I remember when TV was the addiction, so many PSA commercials, it rots your brain. Yes, absolutely. A lot of stuff back when I was growing up about how the TV was going to destroy us all. And maybe it did. Maybe we're still in the destruction. I don't know. But absolutely, TV, the newest technology, this is where you can go back to like the Greeks and see that the newest thing is going to break the society. And so that's part of this conversation. Let's see exactly what Insider describes this as. A Canadian Supreme Court, so we know who to blame, Ian, Runkle of the Bailey, authorized a lawsuit against Fortnite's manufacturer. Would you describe Fortnite as being manufactured? Filed by Quebec parents. So we're in Canada, and then we're also in Quebec, which is even a little bit more divided than just Canada, who say their children became addicted to the video game. All right, let's talk about Fortnite for just a second. For those of you that aren't familiar with it, here's the Fortnite website. You can see this fine gentleman here. This is the Doom Slayer from Doom. This is a cartoon person. All right, stop spinning your screen so fast. The new chapter just started. It's got new graphics, got fun stuff. And the basics of Fortnite are this. It's free to play. And this is a model of video games that didn't exist really when we were kids so much because you needed the internet to even make it work. It's free to play, which means you don't have to pay any money to download it. You don't have to pay any money to play it. And then they sell you cosmetics. So these can all be you. These can all be your character in this game. And the basic premise of the game is that about 100 of you drop onto an island. There's weapons to be found there, and the last person standing wins. It's essentially the Hunger Games in video game form, but that sounds a little bit too serious for what it is, because you can be the Master Chief, you can be Geralt from Witcher, you can be Spider-Man, Darth Vader, whatever. And they all come together in a weird IP frenzy. It's all very cartoony and not so terribly violent, which is one of the reasons it's had massive success, is that parents don't really worry about it like they might worry about something like Doom, even though you see the Doom Slayer here. In this particular context, you don't have to pay anything at all. We're really talking about how it affects your life vis-a-vis time. You know, you don't shower, you don't eat, you don't do your homework, you don't go to your job, whatever it might be. And that is a problem in and of itself. Now, of course, you can pay money. Here's the Battle Pass being sold to you for about $10. And in that Battle Pass, you're incentivized to play Fortnite realistically as much as you can over a 90-day window in order to get all the rewards that are in that Battle Pass to make your money back. Now, you don't have to play it so far as not doing any of the various things we've already talked about. It doesn't require that kind of hourly commitment. I have no idea what the Fortnite hours would be to get to the end of the Battle Pass. I would suspect it's like 100 or 150, which is a ton, right? That's a lot for a video game, but it's probably your main video game. And we're talking about 3 months, not a week or something like that. So I can tell you from experience that when I go and play with my friends, my colleagues, that very often, very early in the season, they'll have level 130 or what have you, and have everything from the Battle Pass already. So that's their primary mechanism. Now, you can go buy things from the store. They don't use loot boxes anymore. I'm not sure they ever did. I can't really remember how their business model has changed. But you can spend money in there and you can play for long periods of time. The trick is it's free to play, which means that you can go and it has millions and millions of players because you can get in the door. You can have a good time, good experience with it for no cash money, which as a video gamer, the free to play movement is maybe not making the awesomest games necessarily, especially in the mobile sector, but it is really, really cool to look at a environment where you can go play a game like Fortnite, you can go play a game like Warzone, you can go play a game like Marvel Snap on your phones, never give them a dime. In fact, if I tend to play games a long time and I haven't paid them any money, I find something to buy for $5 or whatever, just to tell the developers I'm enjoying the space. But that does present problems insofar as you have more and more people engaging with the material that may or may not be sufficiently adult, especially kids, obviously, to make the determination of when to stop and do these things. That, to me, is what parenting is about. In July, 3 parents told Justice Sylvain Lucier that their children appeared to be severely dependent on Fortnite and stopped eating, sleeping, and showering as a result, BBC News reports. All right, so we have another primary source. Let's go over to that. Children stopped sleeping and eating to play Fortnite. Lawsuit. You see why I didn't use this headline. It's just kind of a little bit more boring. Canadian judges approved a class action lawsuit brought by 3 parents who say their children became addicted to the video game Fortnite. Players say their children would forego sleeping, eating, and showering because they were hooked on the game. Who among us has not foregone some sleep to do something that we are otherwise enjoying, whether that's finishing a movie, reading a book, or playing a video game? I don't think that there's anyone. So what we're really talking about is doing it over and over again, if at all, in order to get to a lawsuit level, right? In court filings, they noted that the World Health Organization recognized video game addiction in 2018. We've talked about that in this space. It's really based on not so much at that level, and it's certainly not anything that would be legally effective in a court of law, absent some kind of precedent, which this judge says should exist. The lawsuit is against the game's maker, Epic Games. Maker is much better than manufacturer there, Business Insider, and its Canadian subsidiary. In a statement, Epic Games said it had industry-leading parental controls that empower parents to supervise their child's digital experience, and they do. Now, what's interesting about that is that that's implicitly Epic Games saying, you have all the tools to stop this, and that's on you now. And that's probably right historically from a legal perspective when we're talking about these kinds of things. We don't have a lot of historical perspective on digital technology and parental controls because they're too new for the law to have that perspective on. But Epic is essentially saying here, that's a parental thing. Parents can receive playtime reports that track the amount of time their child plays each week. require parental permission before purchases are made, the company said. It also generally requires a credit card, which requires a certain age itself. We plan to fight this in court. We believe the evidence will show that this case is meritless. Popular online game has amassed more than 350 million players online. While the game is free to play, players pay to use in-game money called V-Bucks. The game has reportedly made more than about $9 billion worldwide. One of the children cited in the lawsuit played over 7,700 hours of the game in less than 2 years. Now, parents, real talk here. 7,000 plus hours in 2 years, 3,500 hours a year. It's only 365 days a year. You're saying that your kid is playing 100 hours, like almost every day, right? Lawyer math, we'll get there. How can you not intervene on this stuff? How can you not take the game away? What is the impact of this? Is it okay if they're playing Fortnite for a portion of those hours and Warzone and Apex Legends and Marvel Snap? Is it the fact that it's involved in one game that is your problem? Or is it these 7,000 hours? Because this is the point in time with those facts that a parent, it's very hard for me to sit here and say a parent shouldn't step in there. It's not Epic Games' responsibility to raise your child. And I don't know if they have a legal liability for providing them a service that apparently you use to distract your kid for 7,000 hours. I don't know. But this is a video gamer in me talking about these things. And by the time you hit those numbers, I start to say, wait a minute. The legal action claims the game was deliberately developed to be highly addictive. Quebec Superior Court Justice Sylvain Lucier ruled the lawsuit was not frivolous. He likened current understanding of video game addiction to early awareness of tobacco addiction. The harmful effect of tobacco was not recognized or admitted overnight. Tobacco does a specifically physical thing to you, specifically physical. He ruled that players who live in Quebec and experience symptoms of addiction after playing the Battle Royale edition of Fortnite since 1st September 2017 can join the legal actions. The last 5 years of Quebec citizenry that plays Fortnite can go try to get some money from Epic Games, maybe. So at this point in time, by the way, this isn't Fortnite losing a lawsuit. The process of making a class action is to go and tell the court, hey, we represent a class. We've got a claim that could be won. This class is likely situated, so it is important for the court to allow us to represent a huge number of people. And so this is the court in Quebec saying, yes, we agree. It says it's not frivolous or manifestly ill-founded. The court concludes that there is a serious issue to be argued, supported by sufficient and specific allegations as to the existence of risks or even dangers arising from the use of Fortnite. So effectively a kind of products liability suit that Epic put out a dangerous good, and that good is hurting people. An attorney from the firm that brought the suit equated the game's maker, Epic Games, to a tobacco manufacturer in an interview and said the legal responsibility was basically the same. Our motion was heavily inspired by the tobacco motion, just in terms of what we were alleging. Lucier echoed the comparison of video game and tobacco addictions. The harmful effect of tobacco was not recognized or admitted overnight. However, the court didn't agree with the parents' claims that Epic Games deliberately made Fortnite addictive. The court finds that there is no evidence for these allegations of the deliberate creation of an addictive game. This does not exclude the possibility that the game is in fact addictive and that its designer and distributor are presumed to know it. We accidentally made it addictive. I mean, that's going to really be a much trickier case to bring. The reason the parents come into court and say they deliberately made it addictive is because that is the easier case to bring. They are bad, right? The tobacco cases are premised around the fact that the tobacco companies were hiding scientific evidence that they found that their product was damaging. Here, you don't have the same type of allegation. And it'll be very interesting to see what, if anything, comes of this particular case. But the fact the court says there's no evidence that they deliberately did this is, well, going to be a problem, I would imagine. Epic Games denied the validity of the suit. Parents can receive these playtime reports. We will fight this in court. It is meritless. On average, Fortnite attracts 80 million active players monthly, according to techacake.com. As part of the class action, other Fortnite players in Quebec who believe they've experienced symptoms of addiction to the game. You want to finish that thought? They can sign on to the class action. They can sign on to the class action insider. And we did have that one last article that basically covers the same ground. The people that brought the suit compared it to tobacco. Does not appear frivolous or manifestly ill-founded. Court finds there's no evidence for being addictive. One of the parents, identified by initials, said their son had played 6,923 games. I'm not sure why the parents get anonymity here in a legal action. I suspect that's a distinction between Canadian law and American law, because generally speaking, we give anonymity to people we feel could be societally harmed by it. It's generally, abuse victims and things like that, as well as kids, but not parents. 6,923 games, and got angry when his parents tried to limit his game time, including by putting a lock on the computer. The kid got angry is your legal argument? Yeah. Okay. I don't mean to sound callous on this. It sounds like a rough scene, but yeah, the kid will get angry when you take his toys away. Another child played more than 7,700 times in 2 years. Oh, now this is interesting. We just heard that reported as hours, which seemed a lot. 7,700 games of Fortnite doesn't have to be a lot. If you imagine how Fortnite works, you drop into the game. If you immediately die, you're the 98th person. That's your rank. You're out. That's probably a 2-minute process, right? So we're not talking necessarily about 7,700 hours. In fact, winning a game of Fortnite probably isn't an hour long. So it's a little bit unclear. We have a distinction here. This is why we do headlines here, folks. It's 7,700 hours over here, or on the BBC. Is it on the BBC that has the 7,700 hours? Yeah. One of the children cited has 7,700 hours of the game in less than 2 years. And then this one says another child played more than 7,700 times. Reporting. I was discussing this with Ian behind the scenes last night, and he said he wanted to cover it when they got the court documents out, which may be in French. So I said, we're just going to do the headlines version. We got some stuff to pop out, but it will be interesting to see exactly what the court filings actually say. Reporting. Those are vastly different things. Vastly different. 7,700 times can sound like a lot. I don't even know. I said we just play Fortnite at Christmas. Last Christmas, I probably have 500 games of Fortnite. Right? Probably. In just like a 2 or 3 week period where I had some time off and I was hanging with my girls. But I get shot a lot, right? So you go out there, you land, it doesn't go well. It's a 3-minute process. They even have a button that says, just load me into the next game. You hit that game. You play for a couple hours, you will have racked up some Fortnite games. So reporting. And yeah, the kids will get mad. Judge authorized a lawsuit for any players residing since September 1, 2017, which we looked at. No dollar figured attached to the lawsuit. Any potential compensation is to be determined by the court if they win. As of Wednesday, 200 people have come forward to join the class, they say. Now, interestingly, I don't know what the class parameters are because none of the reporters deigned to tell me other than September 1st and played Fortnite. So if that's the only parameter, yeah, if you've played Fortnite, you might go and say, I like money. Money's cool. Why don't you just sign up for this class action? If they get money, great. If they didn't, I'm not paying for the lawyers. You are paying for the lawyers if you win, but fair enough. And just sign up for the class action. I don't know. Epic Games did not respond to a message, but they have 30 days to seek permission to appeal the class action certification. Lawyers had argued before the court that the evidence provided was insufficient and that video game dependence is not a recognized condition in Quebec, which seems pertinent for the Quebec jurisdiction, adding that the American Psychiatric Association says there is insufficient evidence to classify it as a unique mental disorder rather than just kind of an addictive personality in general. The judge said that those issues would be argued on the merits. We can have that fight in court, but noted that the WHO declared video game addiction or gaming disorder a disease. The fact that American psychiatrists have requested more research or that this diagnosis has not yet been officially recognized in Quebec does not make the claims in question frivolous or unfounded. It might. I mean, the trickiness with all of this is you're going to say Quebec doctors and medical associations, where your jurisdiction exists, haven't made this determination. And so what we're going to do is we're going to put in front of a jury a battle of the experts that is going to be doctors yelling at each other. And I always feel cautious about putting that in front of juries, right? Because we've talked about it in Epic versus Apple. We went over the battle of the experts and the economic stuff. And I talked about what they did right and wrong. But for the most part, it just sounds like noise. It's just experts yelling at each other that have good pedigrees and they just shout the opposite thing at one another. So you'll have people that come in and say what we're saying or what I'm saying here, which is that it can be very positive. It can be very pleasurable as created by one of these companies. And yet that doesn't necessarily mean that that is something that they should be liable for, and that somewhat is coming from the individuals themselves and or poor parenting. So yes, when you put in your lawsuit, kid get mad when you lock the laptop. Okay, I get that. I get how that feels bad, man, to the parent. I understand that. Parenting, not the joyous romp I was led to believe. A lot of good times, but a lot of times where you have to get in there and say no. And the kids, they don't like that necessarily. So that's the story today. What do people think about it? I'm going to come back to the chat because I know I've seen the chat going crazy over here. I've seen some Hoeg Laws. I want to make sure I grab some of them. But it's a very interesting story to me. I'm a video gamer. I play these things. I have long been kind of managing that. I got through, college. I got through law school. I got through work, doing these various things. And I think I might have told this story already, and you might remember it if I have. I started my legal career working in a big law firm, and they do those intro paragraphs where they say, Rick likes golf, long walks on the beach, and talking about tennis, and that kind of thing. And I had put in there that I wanted to write a book called Everything in Life I Learned from Playing Video Games, and all these various things, and just a bunch of joke lines to try to deliver my personality through these kind of HR emails. And it wasn't a few days later that I got some senior partners that had a closed door meeting, always fantastic, and said, you're not allowed to play video games at work, right? It's like, I'm sorry, what? You're not, you sure going to be capable of doing this kind of thing because you're not going to play video games, or you're not going to get too distracted, or I said, no, it's no different than you saying that you just really love to swim, or that you really enjoy watching Michigan football, whatever. I worked at Ann Arbor, folks, and all these various things. And it is interesting to see the generational divide there of like this alien concept. Now, this was 20 years ago. This alien concept of video games and what it means for a person in a professional capacity. Where I'm sitting here going like, you saw my grades, you hired me. That's still me. What are we talking about here? And so I do think there is that kind of separation a little bit. Or as Shireen says, go out and touch grass, kids. Yeah. I mean, sometimes you have to say that. Let's do something else. Absolutely. Andrew says, if I can play it, I got my butt smacked. David says a game of Fortnite takes about 20 to 30 minutes. If you survive in it. Yeah. I mean, if the 20 to 30 minutes is the Victory Royale kind of concept. And certainly that can happen. But yeah, absolutely. You could die in 2 seconds. I know from experience. Source me. Shireen, my kids don't like me if I restrict their activities for the sake of their health, and I just want to be their bestie instead of parent. Possibly. Each map is capped at 15 to 20 minutes by the storm. I don't know what the final small circle is. So if you don't know Fortnite, it has a storm. All these battle royale games work on this kind of premise that shrinks and shrinks and shrinks to make sure that you aren't just hiding in some corner of the map, and that you actually have the conflict you need to have to end the game. And at some point, the storm is just like this tunnel. It's just this small, very small circle. And so the game's going to end when it gets to that size. There's only 8,760 hours in a year. 7,700 did seem like a very high number, right? Fully half your waking time. I think it's about the games. I think it's the number of games. I think that one about the hours is probably wrong. Modern journalists never leave their desk. They just cut and paste off the internet with zero checking. Well, if they never leave their desk, maybe they're addicted to cutting and pasting. We don't know. Pardon my French, but those are 200 suckers signing up for the class action lawsuit, in my humble opinion. Laughing emoji. Well, we've said the people that make out the best in a class action, a products liability class action like this, is the lead plaintiff's attorneys. They're going to make the most. Jess says, this seems a bit silly. Like, I understand dealing with an angry kid sucks, but they bought the game. They didn't have to buy the game. They downloaded the game. And the medium to play the game for the kid, how is that not the parent's responsibility? Well, let's play devil's advocate, right? I've told you that I don't think that this is a terribly great case. A free-to-play game, playable on the computer, is going to be one that is specifically very easily accessible to your child, right? That you basically have to have computers in your house in order to kind of raise a kid in the modern environment. So you're going to have a computer. chances are it's going to be strong enough to play something like Fortnite, which just doesn't take a lot of resources, and it's free to play to download. So a kid goes and lies on a forum, downloads Fortnite, and then is playing it and gets really into it. That is not something that you would necessarily block very easily. Now, should you be monitoring your kids' activities on the computer? 100%. Is there a way to better parent here? Yeah, absolutely. But it is not the same kind of thing as being addictive to a PlayStation 5 game where you had to get a PlayStation 5 and you had to get probably a disc to play it on, although they could download it if they stole your credit card. We got other problems in that family if we're talking about those things, but that you had to take a few more active steps to actually accomplish. Here, chances are everything you need to play Fortnite is probably in your house right now. And so that does add at least a layer of lack of protection. Devil's advocate. I don't think this kind of case should fly in these circumstances because I think Fortnite is essentially just a very popular intellectual property that your friends are going to be playing. And that is fun and is enjoyable, more enjoyable than algebra homework, more enjoyable than cutting the lawn, more enjoyable than a bunch of other things, including maybe eating. Don't know. And so that presents its own problem, but it's not like the parents went and facilitated Fortnite in the house necessarily. Andrew says there are 17,000 hours in 2 years. Also, 7,700 seems to be about 10 hours a day. They must have played a lot on the weekends and during summer break, holidays to achieve that amount of hours. I'm almost certain now that it's number of games rather than hours. Callista, millions of players. This is out of millions of players. The article makes it sound like it's common. Let's say that everybody that actually reported to the class action, 300 people, is addicted in Quebec. It is still going to be a percentage of a percentage. And so, yes, I think that's an important part about this. Do you have a product's liability case if your product doesn't hurt 99.5% of people, right? Maybe you put a disclaimer on, hey, you might have a negative effect with this. You might have an issue. Talk to your counselor or call a hotline if you think that it is becoming damaging to your relationships or your well-being or your house. Very much like the gambling kind of disclaimers that we see on those casino ads or FanDuel ads or things like that. But yeah, should it be banned? Should they be liable for it? Should it be something that has to change for everybody else? I would argue no. Kelly says, start paying attention to what your kid is doing, who's paying for them to play. Do you as a parent buy all the requirements to play the game? Right? Well, I mean, those are all important. Fortnite is a special case, and these cases are going to come up more often when it's just free to play, and it can happen on any computer. So they sue, says Robbie. Then what happens? Will that make those children less likely to continue playing the game? Doubtful. They'll have money. And less cynically, you will have forced Fortnite and Epic to change some aspect of the game. Is that going to be changing the game itself? Is that going to be putting harsher locks on? Is that going to be just disclaimers? We don't know. But in terms of righteousness, you could say we made them do something. We made them change something. And that might be what your goal is as well. In all seriousness, says Muffin Eye Polero. I grew up playing WoW through my teenage years and spent a couple of hours a day playing games in my 30s. Games are not the problem here. Parents are. Well, and we've heard, of course, about WoW addiction and EverQuest addiction. We're now far enough into the video to say, yeah, it used to be called Evercrack, right? That was what you used to say about EverQuest, is that people would just get sucked into it. Frankel agrees that 7,700 times playing makes a lot more sense than 7,700 hours. I agree. I think it's also probably more easily tracked, the number of games you've played in Fortnite over the number of hours you've been in Fortnite. So I believe you're probably looking at like your stat screen and can see number of wins and losses and add up to 7,700. My baffled brain says we had to limit our kiddo's gaming time. He pouted. We stuck to our guns. He got over it. And I realized if he didn't fight us, his life was easier. He still didn't like to shower because he's a stinky boy. Happy face emojis time too. I like the story by Baffled Brain. Yeah, like I said, parenting is not the joy and rainbows and puppies that you might think it is, but it does have a lot of good parts. Crazy Cat Queen says, I would like to ask for a class action suit against Haagen-Dazs, please, because it's not fair that their ice cream is so delicious that I'm addicted to the butter pecan and I'm obese. It's a joke, Crazy Cat Queen, but it's the truth, right? Those are the same kind of place. Where does human agency come into play? When do we actually have to hold people responsible for their actions? This is a whole kind of philosophical conversation. And I think we can separate it out for this because kids are a little bit different. We do have kind of a guardianship as parents over kids, and how much society should lean into that is an open question that is very worthy of discussion. Jess agrees that 7,700 times makes more sense. Caffeine Junkie just says live off the grid so that the kids will not get exposed to evil games and technology. Just be in the woods. We'll just live off the grid, and then when you have to go to college, it'll be like entering a magic land. What even is this world? We could do that. That's always a choice. Brenda Lee Lidon Carpenter says, that said, my neighbor would definitely blame the game. She always gives in to whining and tantrums, replaces everything that she breaks, screams at her kid, and then says it's because ODD. And yeah, I mean, there are different ways that these things can go down, and definitely, I think parenting is a part of this. David at Prototopic says that's a solid book title, though. And I don't even know what he's referencing. I assume we've had a bunch of solid book titles already in this episode. I would read that book that we don't have a title to here, says Shireen. Sour Cookie says, I don't know if these parents are absent or want to be their kid's bestie or don't want to deal with the kid or whatever, but unfortunately you had a kid. It's your job to take care of them. And I think a lot of people are going to lean in on that, definitely. Mary Beth, this is definitely a parent problem, not a video game issue. Same with when teachers ask parents why their kid has zeros for at-home assignments after 100 reminders. Happy face emoji. Yeah, I certainly think that they are a part of this particular discussion. Jacob says, okay, so one match is around 20 minutes in the Fortnite Battle Royale mode, was created 5 years ago, 6 years next year. Again, 20 minutes if you make it the whole way. 20 minutes if you make it the whole way. Skew, just like old timers thinking cartoon equals for kids. Certainly not with some of the cartoons Netflix is peddling. Whew. George Wyckoff says, people lamented how the young would become idle and unproductive when Gutenberg got up to his shenanigans. And yes, there's a truthfulness to this as well. Technology has always led to kind of a generational shift. An old man shouting at cloud with an onion on his belt saying, the kids these days, right? But the difference here is that we actually have somebody getting through the first gate of a legal complaint. And that is in and of itself news because, well, they're going to litigate about whether or not it's kids these days or whether or not it's Tim Sweeney and Epic Games putting kids under addictive impulses. That Sarah says, who among us West Coasters has not foregone sleep to watch Hangouts and Headlines? Winky face emoji. I don't think anybody's addicted to Hangouts and Headlines, but if you are, my sincere apologies. I will try to make it less fun. Thank you, that Sarah, for the super chat. I really appreciate it. Matthew says, Hoeg, I remember I had a friend whose father allowed us to play Civ 3 for 2 hours maximum. After that, the game was locked, and it was 10 years ago. Blaming the company seems hypocritical. Oh, yeah, you could play Civilization for much longer than you intend. And I think a lot of those games, I play Anno, for instance, now in my adult years. I love Anno. Anno actually has a thing that comes up and says basically like, so like you've been playing Anno a while, dog. Have you thought about doing anything else? Seeing the sun, talking to family members? And then you just ignore it. You just click the button and say, I'm good, Anno. You just keep building up your tiny Victorian city. But they do have those. Nintendo is pretty aggressive with those. If you're playing something like, I don't know, Nintendo Sports or something along those lines, and they will go and they will say, you should consider stretching. You should consider leaving. You should turn off this game. And Nintendo is very specific about those things a lot. Andrew says they probably didn't pay attention to their kids, and when they finally did notice, they had an epiphany on how to try to make some easy money. I think that's a little bit negative for what's happening here, but I don't know that it's entirely without merit. Zachocracy, some parents won't buy games. Some parents are addicted to games themselves. Some parents are in jail for beating their kids and interrupting their games. Everyone is different. That last one was very specific. Any of the Big Bang Theory fans in here, there's an episode where Bernadette hides Howard's video game console because he wouldn't do the laundry. She hid it in the washer. LOL. There you go. That's just smart. Putting Fortnite in the same ballpark as tobacco seems a little insane, says T. Tobacco is known to cause cancer in the user and anyone nearby. Said physical effects of these kinds of things. Kelly Clancy. When I was actually describing living in the woods and then arriving back at the real world, I did think of The Village. So Kelly Clancy with the movie references. I love it. Absolutely fantastic. Caffeine Junkie, the parents complaining can't watch Hoeg. Probably. Wouldn't it be interesting if one of the parents that were playing up to this case was actually watching Hangouts and Headlines right now? That would be very interesting. Renee Hoeg, 2 hours already. How about a cup of coffee? Exactly. Those messages are all over the place. Farrell, Civ 5 made me miss an early morning college class in college. Just one? Just one, Farrell? I remember my roommate coming into the door. I'm like, dude, did you go to class? Now, see, I am guilty in my college days of potentially taking an afternoon class off to go and get a video game that came out that day in the nearby city that had a GameStop, or doing those kinds of things, but always with the understanding of, all right, we don't have a test. Okay, I can read this up. I know what I'm doing with respect to this particular thing, and making those choices. Adults can make those choices. Kids, maybe not so much, but we do need parents to take that role for them as well. But I am certainly guilty of sometimes prioritizing my recreational health over my intellectual health. It still turned out all right. Still turned out all right. And I might have told this story as well. I was at a board gaming convention. I love games of all kinds. And I sat down. I think I had my Hoeg Law hat on. I sat down with a kid and his dad that were playing a pretty simple dice game called King of Tokyo, if you're familiar with it. It's a lot of fun. It's like Yahtzee. And I sat down with them. Board game conventions are pretty cool because you just put the box up and you have a sign for open seats. You just walk and sit with anybody. You meet people. It's really cool. And I got to talking with his dad, and the dad was like so impressed by me, way more than I deserve, by the way. But because his kid, which I might have been 14, played all these board games all the time, played video games all the time, and the dad was like, "So you're a lawyer, and like you practice law, and you're doing all right for yourself, and you have a house and these kinds of things." I was like, "Yeah." And he said, "And you play video games? You play these board games?" I said, "Yeah, I play them all the time. I think they're really good for critical thinking. I think they're great for socialization. I think all these various things." And the dad was just so happy that like I wasn't in a gutter, or I hadn't ruined my life all the time, always. And I always felt good about that conversation, to just be able to be like, "Oh no, you can balance these things. Absolutely. It's just like anything else. So don't worry about your son." And that was great. Now, have I followed up on those two? I have not. I don't know how I would get in contact with them, but I still take credit for it being a good thing, and not something that destroyed their family. So there you go. MZ says, "Yeah, nope, they don't like it, but no has to be said. Got kid into rock climbing and soccer when he was 8 years old, and he was showing too much interest in screens in general. Just played Roblox 2 hours with friends on weekends." Sure. Papa Rick, "Oh my God, those Wii reminders of put the controller down and go outside sometimes." Paraphrasing. Yep, absolutely. Vincent says, "WoW would give you reduced XP if you play too long." Now, what's interesting there is WoW's a subscription game, right? So you want to talk about kind of incentives lining up. WoW would give you bonus XP for showing up for a session, then reduce it after a certain amount of time, and then give it back to you on the next day. Or if you could, I think you could load up a couple of days in a row. And a lot of multiplayer online games do this. Mostly that's so that you slow down your progression curve and make sure that your subscription is extended for the period of time that we want you to subscribe for. And yes, it does have the effect of saying, "Hey, why don't you try again tomorrow?" But it is also to make sure that their business model is as lucrative as possible. So it's pretty interesting. David says, "Doom came out when I was at university." Yeah, Doom's a lot of fun. King of Tokyo is so fun. I'm glad some people recognize it. I enjoy it. It's kind of a nothing random game, but it's enjoyable. And sometimes that's just what you want before you're getting into a deep tactical math situation, like with some of the games we play, certainly. "You've been playing for 5 hours straight. We recommend you take a break. Please eat and take a shower." Laughing face emoji. Can you imagine if that comes out on Fortnite? Maybe it will. Crazy Cat Queen Ricky became that 14-year-old hero. He was very happy with me. The kid was very happy with me. I was happy to have the conversation. This was late at night. I mean, it was the board game convention just goes all through the night. I think this probably was at midnight. So there were people playing at 3 a.m, but I think this was probably at midnight. And I had just wandered down. I was rooming with my brother-in-law to be at this convention. And I just wandered down. I said, "I'm going to go to the convention hall." And yeah, the kid was clearly very happy. And I talked to him about it. I was like, "Well, how are your grades? You know, what do you do?" He was in Science Olympiad. He was doing all these things. I said, "Dad, he's going to be good. don't worry about it. You can survive." And the dad was quizzing me for, I don't even know, the whole game, an hour, about my success and the fact that I was living life. Julia Hoeg, "Giving parents hope that their kids will turn out okay." Laughing face emoji. I hope so. I hope people can occasionally look at me and say, "You know what? That guy didn't turn out so bad." And he's had games since he was 6. And my dad was deeply invested in technology and video games. So I had everything from the Intellivision on up. And so, yeah, you can survive that. You can. Yeah, you have to make choices. You have to say, "You know what? I should probably read that case instead of playing this game." You do that. But it can work out. It can work out Christy says, I played like 8 solo games of Wingspan this weekend. How'd it go, Christy? You know, I have to tell you, Wingspan bounced off me a little bit because I just don't like those kind of set collecting games as much if they're not thematically inclined. And I can't figure out what you're doing in Wingspan. I know it says you're building like a bird sanctuary, but I just can't. I can't make it work. I don't really understand what the eggs mean in context. So I hope you had a great time. I hope it went well for you. I'll have to try that again. It was actually at this very same board game convention that I'm talking about right now that I first got to try Wingspan. I played it twice. Everybody was playing Wingspan. Like, I don't know if it had just come out or it was just super popular, but you go into these convention halls and you see the signs up for the various games, and like half of it was Wingspan. And I was like, okay, all right. So I'm glad you got to play it so many times. Any game that can be played well solo is pretty fun. And I'm glad you enjoyed yourself. Hopefully you, I don't know, you won once. I don't know what the metric is for solo, or whether you're just keeping score. Crazy Cat Queen says, I've been thinking about getting King of Tokyo. It's a good time. It's a good time. I really do have to figure out a format where we can just talk about my game recommendations, hang out. Hey, here are the indie games I like. Here are the board games I like. And do that in some space. Might do it with Ian, might do it otherwise. But a lot of people have asked me for that. And I think it would be fun to do. The hours I played Terraria without noticing how much time passes. That's such a good game as well, Aberstone. Yeah. The games that get you in there. I don't think it's addiction necessarily, but it is kind of taking up your concentration, and that it's suddenly 3 hours later are pretty amazing. There are games that I have on my systems or on my computer that I won't turn on unless I want it to be the last game I play in that session, because I just know it will take up the whole space. And so I won't only turn those on when I'm basically ready to be done with anything else. That Sarah says it's poor parenting logic. Hiring an attorney on contingency is cheaper up front than parenting classes, and someone has to pay for the kid's future therapy. Oh, no. Oh, no. Yeah, well, that's true. That is true. My mom thought only children watched anime when I went to my first anime convention with her 17 years ago. She was pleasantly surprised to find people older than herself there. Yeah, probably pleasantly surprised to see some of the stuff that's in anime. Certainly a lot of adult themes there. And I'm not just talking about stuff that doesn't appear until late night. Christy says, it was fun. Think I won once. I like the Automa system. Want to check out more games by the Wingspan people. Fantastic. Yeah, well, it certainly has a lot of cool toy factor. It has the cool little eggs. It has the bird house dice tower. Very cool. Aber says, I was not addicted, but when my partner went to bed, he gave me a look. And that's when I looked at the clock and was shocked it was almost midnight already. The look. Okay. I just bought Terraria. I'm already 40 hours in the hole. Terraria was fun. My hubby and I beat that together. Terraria. We got an ad for Terraria here. Will Epic pay out in V-Bucks? Yeah. The class action will be like, here's 10 free V-Bucks. Congratulations. You know, you do see that sometimes with class actions, right? These are the ones that give you the coupon for further services or whatever. Like, this isn't, wait a minute. You didn't lose this case at all, other than paying cash money to the attorneys who will not accept coupons. But all right, folks, I really loved that conversation. I think it's fantastic that we have different thoughts on this. Yes, I think the parents are a part of the conversation. Yes, I think what Epic does is part of the conversation. And I am sure that there's a place where video games can go too far and that the law probably should start looking at those. But we'll see how this one in particular goes. I don't think Fortnite is a very clear analog to the tobacco cases. I don't think you have that kind of scientific evidence. I don't think you have that kind of clear and convincing proof of damage. And so we're going to have to take this under advisement. I expect Ian will talk about this on Runkle of the Bailey at some point. So do keep your eyes out for that there. Otherwise, I've got a Virtual Legality that will be premiering at 3 p.m. because that one is ready, as I said, for my aforementioned Definitely Not Addicted to Work weekend. And you can look out for that one. That will be on the FTC and Microsoft, and we'll continue to do more of that in that space. Otherwise, we'll be back for Hangouts and Headlines tomorrow. If you would, as 700 of you are in the chat right now, early in the morning, leave a like on your way out. I really appreciate that. YouTube really appreciates that. And do check out that very first clip of the return of Law and Laughter that we did from our Nintendo video. Otherwise, have a great money, everybody, and I will see you very